From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Protecting a legacy.
I remember coming up here and standing with my mother, and we felt like we were in the bottom of an upside-down ship.
A look at efforts to preserve one big red barn in Illinois. Cattle prices continue to break records, but are producers really profiting?
There's not a lot of meat on the bone here.
Biofuels groups battle back.
We think this proposal needs to be reconsidered, reevaluated by EPA.
After the EPA releases new plans to tackle tailpipe emissions right now on AgDay. Good morning, I'm Michelle Brooke. Clinton has the day off. EPA's draft rule on tailpipe emissions is drawing fire from biofuels groups. The proposal is aimed at accelerating growth of electric vehicles to fight climate change. The rule sets CO2 limits for cars, SUVs, pickups, and heavy-duty vehicles for model years 2027 to 2032. EPA set declining limits on fleet-wide grams of carbon dioxide per mile. Those levels are strict enough to essentially require far more EVs and better efficiency of gas-powered models.
What they've effectively done through those regulations or through these proposals is create a de facto mandate for electric vehicles. There's no way that automakers are going to be able to meet these standards long term unless they are dramatically increasing their production of electric vehicles. And we think this proposal needs to be reconsidered, reevaluated by EPA.
Cooper says EPA is essentially ignoring the role biofuels like ethanol can make to carbon reduction, products that are already available to scale and at a low cost for consumers.
They're essentially saying that electric vehicles have no carbon impacts whatsoever, which we know is nonsense, and they are ignoring all of the upstream emissions impacts related to producing electricity, that is charging the batteries in these vehicles. And they're also ignoring the impacts of the mining for the rare earth minerals that are crucial materials for the batteries in these vehicles.
EPA estimates the proposal would mean EVs rising to 60% of light-duty sales by 2030 and 67% by 2032. That's up from roughly 10% today. EVs would be 50% of sales of vocational vehicles like buses by 2032. Cooper says Europe has proven that pushing to green too fast can be disastrous. Cash cattle prices hit record highs again last week, topping levels set back in 2014. Cash cattle traded from 170 to 180 in the south, with volume at 175 to 177 live. That's up $5 to $7 from last week's weighted average. The northern dress business ran from 283 to 293, but mostly 290. That's up $11. Live sale prices range from 182 to a top of 186 in the north, with the volume at 185. However, even at these record prices, the question is, are cattle feeders making any money, especially considering the high price of feeders and feed?
There was negative closeouts coming in at the 165 levels. I'm kind of thinking these last 2 weeks, this rally from 177 to 185 for the northern guys might actually, it should put some green ink on, and unless, there's a few of those horror stories of cost of gains that really got out of line, but there's not a lot of meat on the bone here.
Barlick says cash in the northern feeding areas has jumped $20 the last 2 weeks, which is also historical. It continues to be tied to extremely tight supplies of market-ready cattle. Lots of farmers hoping to get out in the fields this week and get planters rolling. Meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht joins us. And Matt, what are the chances in the Midwest?
Overall, if we're looking at what's going on in terms of rainfall across the nation, unlike what we had earlier this week, where it was a low pressure system that brought a lot of rain to the south and southeast, we're going to get another low pressure system working across the United States. But as you can see, by Monday at 8 a.m., there's going to be some rain across the area, but also some snow as well. We're going to be digging into some colder air on the backside of the system. So the snowfall totals through Monday and into Tuesday, you can see right up into Wisconsin, Minnesota, and also up into Canada, but also back out here to the west. Now, I mentioned that because coming up in just a little bit, we'll talk more about the next system that's going to be tracking across the United States and kind of what that means in terms of rainfall, with these temperatures getting back to average, if not a little bit above average. But again, snowfall in the forecast for Monday and Tuesday. And here is some great help on the farm. Dry Creek Cattle Company of Nebraska sharing this video, saying they finally got to use that new fence picking up machine the wife gave him 7 years ago. Doesn't look like he minds helping out at all. I'll have more on that forecast coming up in a bit.
Thanks, Matt. The National Weather Service's Climate Prediction Center is now putting our chances for seeing an El Nino weather system later this year at 62%. You see that highlighted here in orange. They predict it will develop in the northern hemisphere next month through July with an 80% chance of El Nino by the fall. They're also calling for neutral conditions to prevail for now. That's in the gray. A transition to El Nino could prove beneficial in the short term, possibly improving weather in Argentina, which is currently facing drought. It could also help boost yields for farmers in the south after dealing with drought all last growing season. A U.S. judge has approved a $75 million settlement between Smithfield Foods and a group of consumers. The class of consumers had accused Smithfield of conspiring to restrict supply to keep prices artificially high, also known as price fixing. The U.S. District Judge in Minneapolis calling the resolution fair, reasonable, and adequate in approving the deal. The resolution is the latest in the long-running court battle over allegedly inflated prices in the $20 billion annual pork market. Smithfield has denied any wrongdoing. Brazilian President Lula da Silva traveling to China last week with one thing dominating the agenda: trade. The Brazilian government said the two sides were expected to sign at least 20 bilateral agreements during the trip. China is Brazil's biggest export market, each year buying tens of billions of dollars worth of soybeans, beef, iron ore, poultry, pulp, sugarcane, cotton, and crude oil. Brazil is the biggest recipient of China's investment in Latin America, according to Chinese state media. Officers in northeast North Dakota warning people to be on the lookout for wild pigs. The Nelson County Sheriff's Department sharing these pictures of a wild pig they reported tried to attack a farmer several times. They say the pig was put down. Wild pigs have become a big problem in Canada, and there's concern that problem will move south to border states such as North Dakota and Minnesota. Corn made some gains on Friday with the help of some China business in both the old and new crop category, but soybeans went the opposite direction. I'll talk with Arlen about that coming up. And an old red barn with quite a few tales to tell. Hear about the effort to help bring it back to life in the country. Grain markets ended mixed on Friday. Arlen Studerman with StoneX is joining us. And Arlen, wheat kind of the leader on Friday, and some of that was war, but also some weather premium, right?
Yeah, exactly right. And when you have risks to the Ukraine crop being able to be shipped, that puts more emphasis on weather problems that we have in the United States. Northern plains planting the spring crop, yes, but the drought continues to intensify in the central and southern plains, and that's doing significant damage to the crop there. Market paying more attention. We had a lot of short covering in this market, and the momentum trading algos really amplified it. Don't pay too much attention to how much we went up today, but if we start turning the chart signals here and taking out resistance, then we'll start paying more attention to it in the days ahead.
You bet. So corn on Friday got a little help from wheat, but also China business and the bull spreads back working.
China continues to buy, and yes, old crop stocks are snug. New crop is looking pretty good right now with El Nino gathering strength. That really increases the odds of having a good crop, above trend crop this year. And so we're seeing those bull spreads work as we split the difference between bearish new crop and bullish old crop. But I don't like the charts at all for that new crop for both corn and beans.
Yeah, and so beans also set back because just the Brazilian crop, that record crop's coming at us, isn't it?
Yeah, and farmers here need to remember that the farmers in Brazil sell against the Chicago market. And so when they see technical failure on the charts like what we had yesterday, they're going to add to their sales, and they've got several billion bushels yet to sell from this massive crop, and that makes sustaining any type of rally much more difficult.
And as planting starts to progress here this week, what do you think? Are we going to see new crop corn and beans kind of pull down the old crop, or are the old crop contracts going to be able to stay strong?
Well, old crop stocks of corn and soybeans are going to remain snug, tighter for beans than for corn. And farmers are focused on that, but they need to remember that fund managers, once the crop gets in, so we're maybe not quite there, they just kind of give up on the old crop and they focus on new crop because they see that as the longer term fundamentals. And then basis and spreads really have to do the work of rationing old crop supplies.
Which we've seen a lot of evidence of that lately. All right, thanks for joining us, Arlen Suderman with StoneX. And you can see our full analysis at agweb.com. We have more AgDay coming up.
Contact Arlen Suderman by email at arlen.suderman@intlfcstone.com.
AgDay Farm Country Forecast is brought to you by Calhoun Superstructure, engineered fabric buildings serving the agriculture and fertilizer industries for over 30 years. Visit calhounsuperstructure.com/AG. That's calhounsuperstructure.com/AG.
I really wouldn't call it an overly active pattern across the United States next week. It's kind of more about the fluctuating precipitation type. As we saw just a little bit ago, there is going to still be some snow in the forecast. But as we go through the rest of our day, you see there's a dividing line between the extreme warm, the temperatures in the mid 80s, and the colder air. So we're seeing that the low pressure system digging some of that colder air back here from the north to the south, setting up that dividing line, and this is going to work across the United States. Now, as you'll see in just a little bit, the overall trend is for a short stint with that cooler air across the United States before temperatures warm back up. So we'll start off, this is Friday at 7 p.m., right along that boundary between the warm and the cold. So we're not only get some snow, but also the potential for some stronger thunderstorms. This isn't a situation where we'll see rain sit over the same area, but there are going to be pockets of some heavy downpours back up here in the northern plains. As we get into our Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon, the track is going to be lifting the more moderate to heavy showers to the northeast with the cold front and severe weather, or at least some strong thunderstorms right along it. Notice how thin this line is. So again, this isn't one of those situations where we're expecting 6, 7, 8 hours of rainfall, rather a possibility of maybe a few strong thunderstorms working across the United States. In the overall pattern, and you'll see this with the jet stream, next week we do have the possibility of some warmer than average temperatures. Even though we have snow in the forecast Monday and Tuesday, we're going to rebound back into some warmer air for a good portion of the nation. Different story as our next system starts to take shape. Once again, as we've seen most of this spring, we have some cooler than average temperatures through California, Oregon, and even into Washington. Extend this out to April 20th through the 26th, and we start to see that cooler air kind of settle in across the northern parts of the United States, with the warmer air back down here to the south. And again, that jet stream is really going to be able to tell the story on where we go next week with our rain chances. So let's go ahead and dig into it. So this half circle, this kind of tilted U, that's going to be moving up to the north and to the east. You got that next low pressure system developing through the weekend where we got our best rain chances. We warm up by Monday and Tuesday before that next cool down starts to come back in play. We'll start off in Decatur, Illinois, partly cloudy, high around 79 degrees, low of 56. Ithaca, New York, partly cloudy, high of 85. And finally, Pueblo, Colorado.
Still ahead, Machine Repeat digs into prices for skid steers. And later, a beautiful barn filled with memories, but in desperate need of a repair. How two farmers are working to bring it back to life in the country. Machine Repeat has been doing some digging into price history when it comes to another workhorse on the farm, skid steers. And he says if you have one, you may be sitting on some money.
Well, if you have a good condition, older, used skid steer, folks, I tell you, you might have a little more equity on your balance sheet than you thought. I've been seeing some really strong auction prices. Now let's start off a week ago, Friday, on a farm auction in Jackson, Ohio, where this New Holland L228, 808 hours on it, so for $38,500. That's tied for the fourth highest auction price ever. Now last Tuesday, on a consignment auction in Seven Valleys, Pennsylvania, by McGrew Equipment Company, this 1999 Case 1845C with only 53 hours on it, so for $40,280. That's the second highest auction price ever on a Case 1845C. And incidentally, the same auction company, McGrew Equipment Company, has the record at $41,000 from an auction back in November of 2021 in Kemar, Maryland. Now, on that same sale last Tuesday in Pennsylvania, a pair of 2011 Bobcat T320s, either side of 900 hours, sold for $55,500 and $55,000 even, the two highest auction prices ever on T320s. And also on that sale last Tuesday, this 2020 Bobcat S650, just 230 hours on it, sold for $49,000, record high price on an S650. And then 2 days later, last Thursday, on a farm auction in Hettinger, North Dakota, an older model S650, a 12 model with 1,755 hours on it, sold for $44,500. That's the sixth highest auction price ever on an S650, but the record high on a 12 model.
Thanks, Greg. Coming up, preserving one important piece of history in an Illinois community. Hear from the owner of this beautiful red barn that's straight out of the catalog in the country.
In the Country on Ag Day is brought to you by Pivot Bio. What if you had the nitrogen you need already on seed? Pivot Bio is the first company to apply nitrogen on seed. The nitrogen you need, now on seed, from Pivot Bio. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
For some people, it's just another barn dotting the rural landscape. But for two farmers just outside of East Peoria, Illinois, it's so much more. And that is why they're working to restore one big red barn. FarmWeekNow.com shares the story.
We are in the hayloft of a Sears and Roebuck barn. My great-great-grandfather bought this farm just after the Civil War. In 1927, there was an accident. The barn that was here burned down. And he ordered a new barn from what was, I guess, the Amazon of the day, which was Sears and Roebuck's. And so he bought this barn, put it up, and it served well. I remember as a kid growing up, milking cows in this barn and putting hay up in this barn. So yeah, it has a lot of connections to me.
I remember coming up here and standing with my mother, and we felt like we were in the bottom of an upside down ship, which is really what it feels like when you're in here. So I grow over 100 varieties of flowers on just about a couple acres. When I first moved here, I was able to host events up in this barn loft. We did dinners, I had a small intimate wedding. In the ground floor, I used to dry all my flowers. Unfortunately, in the last, 5 or 6 years, the barn has started to leak. The barn roof, the shingles fly off in every windstorm, and it started to leak, and I no longer can host those events, and I can actually no longer even dry my flowers down in the ground floor. The drying of the flowers is important to me for the season extension. I'm able to provide flowers through the winter.
You know, it's important for Kira to have this for her operation. It's important for me to preserve this piece of my own history as well as the community history.
We do really want to preserve this barn, but neither of us really have the funds at the moment. It's sort of a modern way to get the community to come together by doing things like GoFundMes. And since I have cultivated this amazing community, I mean, the community here is just top-notch. I've never felt alone in this community. And it just made sense for me to ask them for help.
I would like to think that this piece of land, and there's 100 and some acres here, will feed Peoria in the future. And so that's what we're taking steps to not only raise money to get the place back in shape, but also to ensure that it will always be a farm.
We've told everyone on the GoFundMe page that if you donate 50 or more, we're going to have a big event at the end. So if you feel weird about donating, just think of it as like a ticket to an event. And we're going to have live music, barn tours, food. Hopefully that'll happen in the fall once all the construction is done. I want more people to feel connected to nature and feel connected to rural Illinois. I want to keep cultivating that wonderful community that's around me.
There needs to be some sort of place where we can come back and say, yeah, this is where we were, this is where we need to be, and it's important to preserve the steps in between. It's important for you. This is where you can contribute personally to your own food future and that of your children.
Our thanks to FarmWeekNow.com for that story. At last report, organizers of the GoFundMe campaign had raised over $11,000 toward their goal of $50,000 to restore the barn. Now, if you're interested, just search for Sears Barn on the GoFundMe. That's all the time we have for this morning. Thanks for watching. For all of us here at AgDay, I'm Michelle Ricken. Have a great day.